India is increasingly seen as a strong contender in the race to become the next global growth engine. With its youthful population, growing economy, and ambitious reforms, the country is positioning itself as a vital player in the shifting global economic landscape. At the edge of Delhi, in the city of Noida, the groundwork for India's economic future is being built. Vast blocks of electronics factories have sprung up there, from a 1 million square foot Dixon Technologies plant staffed by about 26,000 workers to a Samsung facility that's churning out 120 million phones a year. Approximately 1,900 kilometers from Noida, the city of Bangalore is one of the fastest developing cities in the world. It is considered the pivot for high technology and heavy manufacturing-based industries. These new manufacturing hubs have turned the country into a manufacturing powerhouse and an engine of global economic growth. Already, we can see some signs that the plan may be working. Foreign investment is pouring in, the country's stock market is booming, and manufacturers are ramping up production. Aircraft makers like Boeing Incorporated are taking record orders, Apple Incorporated is scaling up iPhone production, and suppliers that have long clustered around the manufacturing corridors of southern China are following. So, why is everybody so interested in India? Well, one of the biggest reasons is simply that it's not China. While India's economy is speeding up, China's has been slowing down. With China's strained global trade relations, it seems India has a unique opportunity to overtake it as the world's largest contributor to growth. For all the optimism, India's $3.8 trillion economy is still dwarfed by China's $18.3 trillion behemoth, and economists say it could take a lifetime to catch up. Shoddy roads, patchy education, red tape, and a lack of skilled workers are just a few of the many challenges Western companies face when setting up shop. While the country has 167 billionaires, more than 129 million people still live below the poverty line. These disparities extend to the education system, where over half of the country's fifth-grade students struggle to read at a second-grade level. India and China together contribute 40% to global growth, with China at 23% and India at 17%. However, according to a Bloomberg economics analysis, India could become the world's #1 contributor to GDP growth as early as 2028. This forecast is based on a baseline scenario where India's rapidly expanding economy is expected to outperform China's long-standing role as the top driver of global economic expansion. For the past 3 decades, China has been the most significant engine of global GDP growth. That made it a magnet for foreign capital and gave it greater clout on the world stage. Every big global company had to have a China strategy. But the so-called miracle phase of China's expansion is now in the past, as a property crisis intersects with growing Western concerns over its dominance of supply chains and advances in sensitive technologies. That's where India comes in. Now the world's most populous country, having just surpassed China with 1.4 billion people, India stands out with its economic growth, a rare phenomenon in today's world. Meanwhile, China, like many developed economies, is grappling with an aging and shrinking population. All these factors are aligning to work in India's favor. The country is striving to make its economy more competitive, a shift that appeals to Western businesses looking to diversify away from China and tap into India's vast pool of affordable labor. At the end of World War II, China and India were both impoverished countries with large populations. As recently as the 1980s, their living standards were nearly identical. China's command and control system relied on state ownership of virtually all means of production, while India's model combined private ownership with government control over key industries. Neither system produced positive outcomes. In the early 1980s, China began implementing sweeping economic reforms, ushering in an era of spectacular growth. India, prompted by a foreign exchange crisis, followed a decade later. But although the country's GDP growth accelerated, it never matched the rapid pace of China's economic rise. Today, India's per capita income is $2,700, compared to China's $12,970. On the surface, India holds significant advantages over other major economies. Its economic growth is primarily fueled by demand. Over the past decade, consumer behavior in India has undergone a remarkable transformation. With 1.4 billion people and numerous unmet needs, the country's growth is driven mainly by domestic consumption and investments. It's fascinating to see how attitudes towards spending have shifted, from avoiding purchases altogether to focusing on avoiding unnecessary ones. This shift in mindset is a testament to the progress made in both economic conditions and consumer awareness. In 2023, India's consumer spending reached $2,142 billion, marking a 6.45% increase from the previous year. To put this into perspective, back in 2012, consumer spending was around $1,031 billion, which means it has nearly doubled in a decade. On the supply side, by 2030, India's working-age population is expected to be 1.04 billion, with a dependency ratio at its lowest in history at 31.2%, contributing just under a quarter of the incremental global workforce. The working-age population bulge is expected to last until 2055. The Asian miracle was built on harnessing this trend. Japan entered this sweet spot in 1964, South Korea in 1967, and China in 1994. Additionally, India has the largest pool of English-speaking STEM graduates in the world. India's financial markets are in a better state than ever before. With the opportunities in China cooling, investors need alternatives, and India comes closest. The MSCI India Index is up 18% this year, compared to 2% for the MSCI Emerging Markets Index. Additionally, bank balance sheets are stronger, and credit markets are functioning well. However, India still has a lot of work to do, from modernizing its infrastructure to growing its workforce to building out its urban centers. This is a significant and long-standing issue in India. The country lags behind China on several key metrics. For instance, the manufacturing corridors in southern China feature world-class infrastructure and highways. China is also renowned for its highly developed high-speed rail network, which took years of dedicated effort to build. India has long struggled with issues like poor road quality and underdeveloped railroads. It also lacks sufficient airports and ports, critical infrastructure needed to attract foreign manufacturers. Although India is making significant investments in infrastructure, the country has been adding 10,000 kilometers of highways annually. Since 2014, the number of airports has doubled, and an upgraded railway system will feature new high-efficiency freight corridors connecting India's economic centers. In addition, one of the most remarkable changes has been in digital infrastructure. With 881 million internet subscribers, India has the second-largest internet-enabled population in the world, trailing only China's 1.05 billion. Building on this widespread access, India has developed a digital public infrastructure that is being studied by other countries. This model combines a population-scale unique identity system, a seamless digital payments interface, and a data management system that allows citizens to access essential documents online, such as tax records and vaccination certificates. These advancements make public services and credit more accessible to a broader segment of the population. As a sign of this transformation, India now leads the world in digital payments, surpassing China by a significant margin. Remarkably, the volume of India's digital payments exceeds the combined total of the next 4 leading countries. To see the kind of growth India wants, it will also have to drive up its labor force participation, which is currently among the lowest in the world. Only a little over half of the country's working-age population is working or looking for a job. Rates are even lower for women. This is a huge problem because you need more people to be in the workforce to generate growth. India suffers from high unemployment, and a very large share of its economy is agricultural. The fact is, India's workforce is undereducated. There are jobs in the service sector, high-tech industries, or even in the agricultural sector, but many workers fail to secure them because they are low-skilled labor. One of the broader goals for growing India's economy is to grow the country's middle class in the same way China has been able to. The development of India's middle class is inextricably linked to building out the manufacturing industry. Manufacturing is one of the few sectors in an economy that can generate large numbers of jobs, particularly for people with a little education who might not qualify for technology company roles. These are the people India needs to employ to develop and boost its economic growth rate to a level that could eventually overtake China. If India manages to get more people into the labor force and expand its manufacturing sector, it will also need to build out its cities. Just 36% of India's population lives in cities, compared to over 64% in China. This highlights the need for improved infrastructure, not just highways and high-speed rail, but also metro lines, improved inner-city highway links, and other urban development projects that will attract housing and drive economic growth. India still has a lot of catching up to do. Its $3.5 trillion economy is currently only about a fifth the size of China's. But India doesn't need China to slow down in order to advance. Economic growth isn't a zero-sum game, and China and India share strong economic ties. As a result, a slowdown in China isn't entirely beneficial for India in all respects. Many major manufacturers and multinationals, like Apple and Samsung, are moving into India, but a significant portion of investment is also flowing to Southeast Asia. Vietnam, for instance, has attracted substantial manufacturing investment from companies that might have otherwise chosen China. Similarly, Mexico has become a major recipient of this shift in investment. India is securing some of this investment, but it's often described as a challenging place to do business. There are numerous barriers to entry, including complex tax systems, and the machinery of government operates much more slowly compared to China, where one-party rule has managed to streamline the economy in a rapid and efficient way. The US can play a key role in India's ambitious economic growth plan. It views India as a partner, a country it can collaborate with, and one that shares some democratic values. A more economically vibrant India serves as a counterweight to China, which is increasingly the US's biggest global rival. Strategically, India represents a valuable partner for the US and offers significant opportunities for American companies to invest. However, India's rapid economic expansion has its downsides. Taking China as an example, the environmental consequences of its growth are well documented, including severe pollution in cities like Beijing and Shanghai. Similar issues are now seen in many Indian cities, particularly New Delhi, which suffers from some of the worst air pollution in the world. This is one of the most obvious drawbacks of rapid growth, especially on such a large scale. In conclusion, India has the potential to overtake China as the world's engine of economic growth, becoming the largest contributor to global growth within this decade. There is strong belief that India can assume this role as China's growth slows. For India, this means attracting more foreign investment, drawing in more global companies, and solidifying its position as a key player on the world stage. And that's the latest on today's top stories. What are your thoughts? If you'd like to dive deeper into any of these topics or explore related issues, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for tuning in and spending your time with us. Stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you next time. Take care.